Nate always thought he was just a small piece in the big galaxy. He fixed things. Broken wires, damaged walls, old computers if it sparked, he could fix it. He was posted on a space station that floated between Earth space and the Thauran Alliance. Most humans didn't stay there long, but Nate did. Not for the job, not for the food. Not even for the stars outside his window. He stayed because of her Shirali. She wasn't like the others. Her skin shimmered like deep blue water, and her voice was soft, almost musical. Her species, the Thauran, were tall and elegant, known for their wisdom. Shirali was the daughter of their ambassador. She wasn't just pretty. She was kind, smart, and always calm. Even when things went wrong, they met 3 years ago, when Nate was sent to fix a faulty power line in the council chamber. Shirali had been there, trying to translate a message for her father. She smiled at him and offered him water. It was the first time Nate forgot what he was doing mid-dash repair. After that, they kept meeting. Small talks turned into long conversations, sometimes about Thauran traditions. Nate taught her how to eat spicy noodles without crying. She taught him how to calm his mind through Thauran breathing. They became close. Too close, Nate thought, because Nate had a problem. He loved her. Not the small kind of love, not just friendship or admiration. Real love. The kind that made his heart beat fast when she entered the room. The kind that made him watch her leave long after she'd gone, but he never told her. He thought it was stupid. She was important, respected, and part of a powerful family. And he was just a human tech guy who slept near humming generators and lived off recycled coffee still. The feeling didn't stop every time she laughed at his dumb jokes. Every time. She waited for him at the station garden to watch the fake Earth sun rise. He wanted to say it, but he did. Other humans teased him, Nate. Just say it already. What's the worst that could happen? But Nate was scared. What if? She said no. What if it ruined everything? One day, something changed. A message came from the Thauran Council. Tensions had risen between the Alliance and another species. To keep peace, the Thauran were thinking of removing their diplomats from human stations. Shirali and her father would have to leave. Nate felt like the air had left the room when he heard the news. He couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Couldn't even fix a broken drone that kept flying in circles. On the night before her possible departure, he opened his datapad and typed a message. Shh, Raleigh. I know this is sudden. I've loved you for a long time. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's foolish. But if I don't say it now, I'll regret it forever. His thumb hovered over the send button. Took a deep breath. But then he pressed delete. The next morning, the news came in. The council had changed their mind. Thauran. Diplomats would stay. Everyone cheered. Nate smiled like everyone else. But inside, his heart still ached. Weeks passed. Nate acted normal, but he knew he'd missed his chance. Until one evening, he was repairing a light fixture near the garden when Shirali approached him. You sent me a message, she said. Nate froze. What? 3 weeks ago? Your message. Showed up in my backup feed, only for a moment. Then it disappeared. He looked down, tools shaking in his hand. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to, she tilted her head. You didn't mean to love me? Nate felt his face burn. No, yes I do. But it wasn't fair. You're you, and I'm just Shirali raised a hand, gently stopping his words. You didn't send the message, but I read it. Stood frozen. Silence between them stretched. Finally, she smiled. I'll pretend I never saw it, she said softly. Then turned and walked away. Nate didn't know if he felt relief or heartbreak. He thought that was the end of it. He didn't. No, it was only the beginning. Nate didn't sleep much that night. He lay in his bunk, staring at the low ceiling of his small quarters. Machines hummed nearby, filling the silence, but his mind was loud. Her words repeated in his head. I'll pretend I never saw it. Did that even mean? Was she being kind? Letting him off without hurting his feelings? Or did she feel something too and just didn't know how to say it? He sighed and turned over again. The next few days were awkward. Not on purpose, not cold, but something was different. Sorelli still met him in the garden sometimes. They still shared tea, still spoke about station life and funny alien customs. But Nate noticed small changes. She didn't sit as close. She didn't laugh as often, and her eyes, those deep silver blue eyes, seemed to search him more. Carefully now, Nate tried to act normal. He cracked his usual jokes. He fixed broken panels and cleaned out the filters near her father's office. He even taught a group of young engineers how to patch communication lines faster. But inside, he felt off balance. Then came the joint. Mission. The space station had been invited to send representatives to a nearby moon, one used for training diplomatic teams from several species. The Thalron were asked to lead a teaching session. Humans were invited to support. Nate was chosen to assist with tech and communications. Garely was assigned to lead her team. The moment their names were announced together, Nate felt his stomach twist. The trip would last 5 days. When the ship left the station and entered silent space, Nate sat across from Jirali in the transport cabin. The mood was quiet. Neither said much. But as the stars passed by the windows, something shifted. On the second day, their ship landed near a mountain range. Thick trees, strange winds, and old alien ruins filled the area. Nate and Jirali were sent out together to check on a broken relay tower. The walk took hours, but slowly they began to talk again. "I used to think you were strange," Jirali said, smiling as they stepped over glowing roots. Nate chuckled. "You're not the first to say that." But not in a bad way. She added, "You see the galaxy like a child does, full of wonder." He looked at her, "And you see it like a teacher, full of rules." She smiled wider. "Maybe that's why we work well together." At the relay tower, Nate climbed up and started repairs, while Jirali watched below. He noticed her eyes never left him, not even once. On the 4th day, things went wrong. A sudden energy surge swept through the area. Communication lines shut down. Their team was scattered. Jirali and Nate were cut off from the others. Their only shelter was a small cave under the hill. Rain fell outside. It was thick and cold, glowing faint green in the moonlight. Nate made a small heater from parts in his bag. Jirali sat close, her arms folded, her eyes distant. "Are you scared?" he asked gently. "A little," she said. "Not of the storm. Of silence." Nate looked at her. "What kind of silence?" "The kind that hides truth." He nodded slowly. "You mean, like not saying what you feel?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "I waited for a long time. Thalron don't speak their feelings quickly. We're taught to wait for the right moment, the right signal." Nate stared into the heater's soft light. "And humans?" She asked. "We talk a lot," he said with a soft laugh, "but not always when it matters." The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, full. Real Nate opened his mouth to speak, but she gently touched his hand. "Not yet," she whispered, "not here, not like this." He didn't push, just nodded. They stayed close that night, watching the storm outside the cave. 2 figures from 2 worlds, both carrying words they couldn't yet say. On the 5th day, the storm cleared. The rescue ship arrived. Their team had survived. The mission was marked as a success. Back on the station, everything returned to normal. Almost, but Nate knew something had changed. They weren't just friends anymore. They weren't strangers trying to read signals. They were something in between, something waiting. Cheryl passed him one day in the hallway. She didn't stop, just brushed her fingers against his as she walked by, and he smiled, because even if she hadn't said it yet, he now believed she would someday. Days passed. Nate worked, slept, ate everything as before, but everything inside him was different now. Something between him and Jirali had changed, and he felt it in every quiet glance. Every small touch, every word she spoke, just a bit. Softer than before, yet nothing had been said clearly. Not a confession, not even a clear hint. They were walking a thin line between truth and silence. One afternoon, Nate got called to fix a damaged signal array near the outer ring of the station. It wasn't a big job, but the area was cold and quiet, with a view of the stars that made people stop and think. As he tightened a panel, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned and saw Jirali. "You followed me?" he asked, smiling. "No," she replied. "I walked here and found you by chance." He raised an eyebrow, a lucky chance then. Jirali didn't answer. She stepped beside him and looked out the wide panel window, where the stars blinked like silent watchers in the dark. "My father is returning to Thalrin soon," she said quietly. "Is for a short visit." "Chess, are you going with him?" "I'm not sure yet." He nodded. "Makes sense. You're important. The Thalrin need you." "And what about you?" she asked. "Do you need me?" The question came so suddenly, so softly, that it caught him off guard. Opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Not yet. He was scared, again scared. To ruin what little closeness they had built, she didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she said, "Do you remember the cave?" "I do," he replied. "I think about it every day." I wanted to say something then, she said. But I was afraid. He turned to face her. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that if I said it and you didn't feel the same, I would lose something special." Nate's heart beat faster. "Shura, I do feel the same. I always have." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You almost told me once." "I did," he said, "and I was a coward." "Maybe," she said gently, "but maybe we both were." There was silence between them, soft, full of weight. Then, before he could speak again, a voice came through the comm system. "Repair." Crew needed Nate in the lower levels. He sighed and picked up his tools. "Duty calls," he said with a weak smile. "Go," Garrely said, "but don't take too long. The stars are patient, but I'm not." Later that night, Nate sat at his desk, thought about writing again. Maybe this time a message he would actually send. But words felt too small. Instead, he closed his eyes and remembered the sound of her voice, her question, "Do you need me?" He wished he had answered right then and there. The next day, the station hosted a cultural event. Food, music, and traditions from across the galaxy were shared in the grand hall. Nate, wearing a cleaned-up version of his work uniform, wandered through the crowd, tasting alien dishes and dodging small talk. Then he saw her Zetero, stood near the center of the room, dressed in traditional Thalrin robes, deep blue with silver threads that shimmered like stars. She looked strong, proud, and yet her eyes searched the room until they found him. He walked toward her. "You look ... He began, but stopped. No word felt right. "So do you," she said, smiling. They sat at a corner table. Thalrin music played. In the background, soft and slow. "Tonight is important for my people," she said. "It's the festival of first hearts. It's the night where two souls are allowed to say what they feel, without fear, without law, without mistake. It's the one night we are free to speak with our hearts alone." Nate looked at her, feeling his hands grow cold. "So what would you say," he asked, "if you could speak with your heart?" Shirelli looked into his eyes. Then, very softly, she whispered, "I would say, I've waited a long time for you to stop being afraid." His breath caught. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. He squeezed it gently. "I'm not afraid now," he said. And though the words "I love you" still didn't pass between them, something stronger did. The space between them melted. Their silence turned into comfort. And the stars above the station watched as two souls slowly stepped into something new. Something real. Nate had never felt this light before, like his body still moved through the station, did his tasks, spoke with people, but inside, it was like something had shifted, something had opened. He kept thinking about the way Jirali looked at him. During the festival, the way her fingers had stayed in his hand, her voice soft and steady as she told him she'd waited it, was real now. They had crossed the invisible line between almost and maybe. They hadn't said everything, but they had said enough. In the days that followed, things changed in small but deep ways. They still met at the garden, still shared quiet talks and cups of warm Thalrin tea. But now, they didn't pretend it was just friendship. When Nate passed her in the hallway, she would glance at him with a smile that only he understood. When they worked together on projects, their hands sometimes brushed, and neither of them pulled away. One afternoon, she sent him a small pouch of tau roots, something Thalrin used only in bonding rituals. He didn't know what to do with them, but he kept them safe in his locker like a treasure. Still, they hadn't spoken those 3 words yet. Nate wasn't sure why. Maybe they were waiting for the perfect time, or maybe they were afraid the words might ruin what already felt so perfect. One day, while repairing a relay in a quiet tunnel, Nate heard footsteps. He didn't need to turn to know it was her. "I brought something," Shirali said, holding up a small glowing sphere. "What is?" A memory light. We use them to show someone how we see them." She placed it on the floor. The light flickered, and slowly, small shapes appeared in the air above it, faint scenes, like smoke forming into pictures. The first was Nate, laughing beside a machine. Then Nate, handing her a cup of coffee. Then Nate, staring up at the stars. From the observation deck, looking small but full of wonder, Nate stared at the images. "You kept those?" "I kept everything," she whispered. His heart felt full. Almost too full. "Shirali," he said slowly, "do you know how many times I wanted to tell you how I felt?" "Probably fewer than I wanted to hear it," she replied. He laughed, softly, then went quiet. "Then why didn't you say anything?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat beside him, her knees pulled close, her eyes distant. "Because love in my culture is spoken through actions. Words are last. We show care first. Give time, give space. We don't rush the end of the story." Nate nodded. "Humans say it first, and hope everything else follows." She smiled, yes. We walked toward each other from opposite ends. "Well," he said, "I think we've met in the middle now." They sat together, their shoulders touching. "Do you want to know something strange?" Nate asked. "Always. The first day I saw you, you gave me water. Thought it was just polite. Later, I learned it's a Thalrin tradition. Offering water means an invitation to know someone deeper." She nodded. "It was my first invitation." He laughed. "I didn't even get it." "I know," she said with a gentle smile. "I had to give you at least 5 more before you noticed." They both laughed, and the sound echoed through the tunnel like a song. Nate turned serious again. "I thought I was too plain, too human. You're graceful, calm, always in control. I'm just a guy who fixes things and talks too much." Garrely looked at him. "That's what made you different. You didn't treat me like I was distant or delicate. You treated me like a person, and you made me feel seen." They sat for a long time without speaking. The memory light slowly faded. The soft hum of the station surrounded them like a blanket. "Nate," she said suddenly, "when you said you loved me, in that message you deleted, did you mean it?" He looked at her. "Every word." She nodded. "I believe you." He hesitated. "Do you feel the same?" Garrely smiled, but this time it wasn't soft or mysterious. It was full and bright, like a secret finally being shared. "I do," she said. "I have for a long time, but I was waiting to say it first." Nate blinked. "Wait, you were waiting?" "Yes," she said, laughing gently. "I wanted to be the one to say it first. I thought it would surprise you." He stared at her, then laughed with her. "You mean we were both waiting on each other all this time?" She nodded. "That's so us," he said, shaking his head. "Yes." She whispered, leaning closer, but not anymore. And there, under the quiet glow of the tunnel light, she finally said the words, "I love you, Nate." And he replied, with a smile so wide it hurt, "I love you too, Garrely." Things were different now. Not just in big ways, but in every small moment too. Nate and Jirali didn't have to hide how they felt anymore. No more stolen glances, no more guessing, no more waiting. Their feelings were real, shared, and open. And yet, the galaxy still moved around them. They had work to do, duties to fulfill, missions to complete. Still, they found ways to make time for each other. They started meeting at the old tunnel. Where she had shown him the memory light, they would sit there in silence, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just watching the small blinking lights of the station systems. Nate fixed a broken heater and brought snacks. Jirali brought stories and little gifts from her culture, items with meanings Nate didn't always understand, but treasured anyway. One evening, she handed him a small woven band made from silver thread. "What's this?" he asked. "It's called a Havenketh," she said. "Thalren wear it when they begin a bond." "Like a relationship?" he asked. "Yes, but more than that. It means we choose to learn each other's hearts." Nate looked at it, quiet for a moment. Then he tied it around his wrist. "I want to learn yours," he said softly. She smiled. "And I want to learn yours too." Their lives slowly began to weave together. Nate started learning Thalren, customs, how they greet elders with their eyes, how they speak truth by touching the center of their chest. He even tried learning their language, though his accent made Jirali laugh every time. She helped him practice, correcting his words gently. In return, Nate showed her human things. He taught her how to dance to Earth music, even though he was clumsy. He showed her old movies from Earth and explained why humans loved stories with heroes who never gave up, even when they were broken. Jirali watched them with interest, always asking deep questions that made Nate think harder about things he never questioned before. "Humans believe love is loud," she said once. "Big words, big actions." "Yeah," Nate said, "but sometimes it's quiet too, like sitting with you." She nodded. "I like the quiet kind." But outside their little world, not everyone understood. Some officers on the station started talking. A few thought it was strange for a human and Thalren to be together. Others whispered that Nate had no place being close to someone like Jirali. The daughter of a powerful ambassador, Nate heard the words, but tried to ignore them. Garalidi, Din. One day, she called a meeting with the station commander. "Is there a rule?" she asked calmly, "against two people from different species caring for each other?" "No," the commander replied, clearly uncomfortable, "but we must be careful. Political balance is fragile." "Then it's not a rule," she said, "just fear." Nate stood beside her the whole time, silent but strong. After the meeting, he turned to her. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she said. "If we don't stand together now, we never will." That night, they returned to their usual tunnel. Nate sat quietly, looking down at the woven band on his wrist. "Are you sure about us?" he asked. "Sure." I looked at him, eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "I've never been more sure." He smiled. "Then I'm sure too." They sat in silence again. This time it wasn't hiding anything. It was peace. And in that moment, Nate knew whatever came next, they'd face it together. The galaxy outside the station was vast and full of mysteries. Stars flickered like distant fires, and ships moved silently between worlds. Nate and Jirali had come far since the day he first fixed the power line in the council chamber. Had crossed borders not just of space, but of hearts. Now they were ready for the next step. A new mission had arrived. This time, it was not about repairs or diplomacy alone. It was a joint cultural exchange between humans and Thalrona, a way to build trust between their peoples by sharing more than words: music, art, stories, and traditions. Nate and Jirali were asked to lead the human Alran team. They prepared. Together, blending their cultures like colors on a canvas, Nate learned to play a Thalren instrument with long strings that sang in the wind. Garali practiced human songs, learning to hum the melodies Nate loved. On the day of departure, the station was alive with excitement. Ships glowed softly against the dark void. Friends and colleagues wished them luck, some with smiles, some with doubt. As their ship left the station, Nate reached for Jirali's hand. She squeezed it gently, her eyes shining. "This is our chance," she said. "To show them who we really are," Nate replied. The journey took them across star systems, through colorful nebulae that stretched like clouds of fire.
Ow!
Everywhere they went, they shared their gifts. In one station, Nate told stories of Earth heroes, of people who fought for what was right, even when all seemed lost. Jirali shared Thalren poems about patience and peace, about the stars watching over their souls. People listened. They laughed. They cried. Barriers that had stood for centuries began to crumble. At night, when the others slept, Nate and Jeremy sat together on the observation deck. The galaxy spread before them like an endless ocean. "Do you remember?" Nate asked. "How scared I was to say I loved you." Shirali smiled. "Yes, but I was just as scared. We waited a long time, and now we don't have to." They leaned closer, the stars reflecting in their eyes. "What happens next?" Nate asked softly. "We build a new story," Shirali said, "one where love is not bound by rules or fears, where humans and Thauron walk side by side, where we face the galaxy together." The ship glided forward, carrying them not just through space, but into a future they would shape with their own hands. Back on the station, news of their mission spread quickly. Whispers turned into cheers. People began to hope that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could be a place where differences were not walls, but bridges. Nate looked at Jirali and felt his heart full. He reached out and took her hand again. "Thank you for waiting," he said. "Thank you for loving me," she replied. And under the endless sky of stars, they said the words together, "I love you." It was no longer a secret. It was their truth, and it was just the beginning.